Hi Not Board Gamers, and welcome back to Not Board Gaming. I'm your host, I'm Mark. Now, I have just finished yet another game of Nemesis Lockdown. And as you probably know, right now over on Gamefound, there is the campaign for Nemesis Retaliation, which is the third in the series of Nemesis games, obviously starting with the original Nemesis. Then we have Nemesis Lockdown at the back end of, I think it was of last year, and which would be 2022. And now we have Nemesis Retaliation, which is currently on Gamefound, and it's done phenomenal business. So I thought what I'd do is I'd go through, talk about the Nemesis series of games, certainly obviously Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown, and give you 5 reasons why the game may or may not be for you. I'm coming at this from a position of bias. I absolutely adore original Nemesis. I mean, I absolutely love it. It's like number 3 in my top 10 favourite solo games of all time. It's not for everybody, absolutely it's not for everybody. And it's one of the games that I got when I first got into the hobby back in kind of 2019-ish, there or thereabouts. I'd heard about the game. I discovered board gaming too late to get in on the Kickstarter, but at that year's kind of UK Games Expo, the very first stall I went to was the Awakened Realms stall, and I think I was the first person there, and I bought Nemesis. I think I paid about 120 quid for it at the time. And, you know, it was the first game I played when I came back from my very first trip to UK Games Expo, and I absolutely fell in love with it. And why is that bias there? Well, you see, not only is Nemesis kind of in my, like number 3 in my list of solo games of all time, top 10 solo games of all time, but the original Alien film, not so much Aliens, which is still a great film, but the original Alien film is constantly my ever-rotating list of top 3 movies of all time as well. And as we all know, Nemesis is very much a take on the Alien films. It's the best, possibly the best Alien game that's not called Alien. It obviously borrows heavily from it. Now, since playing Nemesis and doing my original review, which you'll see in the link, you'll have seen the video, etc. I've struck up a decent friendship with Adam Kwapinski, the guy behind the Nemesis games, as well as many other games, including the upcoming is it Cthulhu Express, the which is going to come out from Chaosium Inc., etc. And of course, earlier this year, I reviewed Lords of Ragnarok, which I absolutely adored. So I'm coming at this as a slight bias, not so much because I know Adam a little bit, but because I absolutely love Alien and I love the first Nemesis game. But Nemesis games aren't for everybody. Absolutely not for everybody, and I fully understand why they aren't for everybody. Some people prefer to play the multiplayer and don't like the solo. Some people prefer it only solo and don't like the multiplayer, and I'll go into the reasons why. So let's go through kind of 5 reasons why the Nemesis games may or may not be for you. So first of all, reason number 1 is theme. This nails this. Nemesis games and Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown absolutely nail the theme. If you think of the original Nemesis as Alien and you think of Nemesis Lockdown as Aliens, you're not far wrong from that. There are a few liberties taken. For example, obviously in Alien, given the title, there's only one alien on the ship, and in Nemesis there are a number of aliens that can come and get you on the ship itself. But the theme absolutely nails it for me. Well, it absolutely nails the theme for me. I think that it creates that feeling, certainly in original Nemesis, that feeling of dread, of something constantly lurking around the corner, of things always on the cusp of about to go completely and seriously wrong. It creates some of the most cinematic moments I have when I'm playing games, and I absolutely adore it for that. That theme absolutely carries through into Nemesis Lockdown as well. You've got the, are they called the Night Stalkers in here, or is it called the Intruders in the original Nemesis? And yes, there's loads of kind of additionals and add-ons and expansions you can get for it. But the theme absolutely carries down into Nemesis Lockdown as well, with some added mechanisms in there, things like the dark in there and how you clear noise markers, which work differently in Nemesis Lockdown. If you're looking for a game that gives you that feeling of dread when you watch Alien or Aliens, and you know that things are going to go bad, and they're going to go bad pretty quickly and go bad pretty badly as well, then it absolutely nails that theme. So why may the theme not be for you? Well, also with that, some people just don't like science fiction games, and I absolutely get that. And as much as I would say that, the original Alien film is, yes, it's set in space, but it's the ultimate haunted house movie for me, I would say more or less a similar thing about Nemesis, but you cannot get away from that underlying theme of science fiction. You're in a spaceship, or you're on a base on Mars, or wherever Nemesis Lockdown is set, and you cannot get away from that. The weapons that you use, the fact that you've got aliens there, the very characters that you're using are all science fiction based, and that is not going to be for everybody. Similarly, the feeling of dread that the game can give, the feeling of of impending doom that the game can give, is also not going to be for everybody. It is a dark, bleak game. It's not a case of if you're going to die. Most games you'll play is going to be when you're going to die and how you are going to die as well. And it can be pretty bleak in that respect and pretty horrific. So certainly if you've got younger gamers in the family, the theme may not be right for younger gamers. So from a positive perspective, the theme absolutely nails it on the head in terms of the feeling of dread, the feeling of kind of hopelessness, and kind of creating this or wandering around this spaceship that you cannot remember, or this Mars base that you cannot remember where things are. Absolutely perfect for the game. That theme is not going to shine through for everybody. So with that in mind, do bear in mind, and I would do your research on both Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown and Retaliation to find out if the theme is going to hit for you. So number 2 is going to be the gameplay itself. Now, gameplay in Nemesis, for me, really, really kind of shines through. When I play solo, there is an option to play it true solo. I like to play two-handed as a cooperative mechanism, and it absolutely really works for me. You have essentially a deck of 10 cards, and each character has slightly asymmetric decks. Some of the same actions on there, some slightly different actions on there. And you're going to deal out 5 cards to yourself into your hand, and then you're going to play those cards to either use the ability on them or spend them, if you like, as currency to carry out other actions, be they basic actions, or you may have to spend additional cards to carry out the actions that are on the card that you're playing. And you're maneuvering around this board, and this board will always have a different layout because you have a number of tiles on the board. Here we go, these, and you're going to lay them out in a random-ish format. They're generally kind of numbered 1 and 2, but where you put them on the board will be different every game, and some rooms just won't appear in some games and they will in other games, and therefore you will never truly know the layout of where you're going, which makes for a really exciting and dynamic gameplay. And you have this thing called intruder bag development or night stalker bag development that you have to do each round as well, and that's going to dictate kind of what potentially happens within the bags for encounters. So you have various levels of aliens and night stalkers and intruders and night stalkers, should I say, that are going to come out from the bag, and you develop that bag each and every round. It gets progressively harder as you go through. The game feels tension building as you are playing the game, and you're laying noise markers and it's dictating where you can go next. Too many noise markers means you're definitely going to have an encounter, and when those encounters come, they can come from relatively benign things, like nothing happening, like a blank token coming out, or maybe a lava coming out, which should be relatively easy to kill, or ride up to adults and breeders and creepers and queens, and therefore you have a real fight on your hands, not to necessarily defeat them, but just to either run away or survive. And all of that builds into this wonderful game that kind of takes place over maybe 90 minutes as you're building your story and you're creating these wonderful cinematic moments. It just, everything about it, from kind of how you play the cards, from understanding that, if I play this card now, I know it's not going to come out in my next hand, or have I got a contamination card, which are these things here, which you can get into your hand. They can gum up your hand, so to speak, and then you may want to test them in one of the winning conditions that you have no infected cards, and there are ways to get rid of them. It's always a bit of a dice roll. So you're constantly making adaptive decisions in the gameplay, and that is really, really exciting for me. I say I play it cooperatively, two-handed. As a solo gamer, you can play it pure solo, and as a multiplayer, you can play it cooperatively, or you can play it with a kind of a hidden traitor mechanism or a traitor mechanism in there, which can make it very, very interesting. So the gameplay for me absolutely works. So why wouldn't the gameplay work if I'm so effusing so enthusiastically about it? Purely because of what I've said. First of all, you have the board itself, and you have this kind of dynamic board that's going to be there each and every time you play, and that stops you potentially learning the game. It creates a swingy quality to the game, should I say? Whereas one game may seem, well, it's never easy, may seem relatively straightforward with minimal kind of intruder interaction, and other games you may be swamped with them. It may be that the room that you want is completely in a completely different area of the board on one game you play, and it's bang next to where you want it to be on another game that you play. It can feel a little bit restrictive to just have 10 cards, and you get the best play out of it by understanding how each character works and their cards works. And in reality, you're not going to add to those to that deck of cards other than with the contamination cards, which are of no real benefit for you. So it can feel a little bit restrictive, and it can feel a little bit counterproductive that you may have one card that allows you to do a particular action, and you use it on one turn to spend for another action, but you then can't take that action for your next turn. You've got to wait till it comes back into your hand when you reshuffle. And that can feel a little bit restrictive for people. From a solo perspective, I say true solo is okay. I quite like true solo, but I think the game absolutely shines from having two characters on the board and the interplay between them as you explore it round. So if you're looking for a true solo game, it can be played true solo, no problem whatsoever. It doesn't really shine as a true solo game. Also, if you're looking at kind of the multiplayer game, I know there is player elimination in this, and it can happen sometimes relatively early in the game. If you get ambushed and you lose combat and a fire token comes out, or you end up in a room that's on fire, then you can get knocked out fairly quickly. So if you've got a lot of people playing it, it could be that one or two players are knocked out relatively early in the game. That's not, player elimination is not for everybody. So that could be a reason why the gameplay isn't for you. But for me, as I say, from a solo perspective, playing it two characters, exploring the board in either Nemesis or Lockdown gives this wonderful feeling, this kind of I say cinematic type effect as you're building your story and creating these wonderful cinematic moments, but it's not going to be for everybody, and certainly player elimination can be a big thing. So next we're going to talk about point number 3, why it may or may not be for you. And let's talk about the amount of content. So if you look at the base game of Nemesis, you have the intruders in there, and that's it. And you can play that game ad infinitum, or Lockdown, play it ad infinitum and have a slightly different game every time, as I say, because of the dynamic nature of the board. But if you want more from that, there are so many expansions for it now. For the original Nemesis, you have things like Aftermath. For Nemesis Lockdown, you have the Chytrids expansion, etc. There is so much content for this game, and each one kind of changes the game, how the game plays ever so slightly. So, the intruders in the original Nemesis, they're very much full frontal assault when they come out for you. I think it's the Void Seekers that are kind of more about psychological damage, etc. You've got the Chytrids in here, which work completely differently as well. So there's so much content that if you want to start spicing up your game, you absolutely can. There are a number of kind of campaign-style comic books that you can use for it as well, with the Untold Stories series. And then you have Aftermath, which is about a ship coming down after the original Nemesis and docking with it, and then kind of picking up an investigation after there. So you can throw all these things together and change how you play Nemesis so differently. And that is really, really great. If you love the game, there are so many ways to play the game. But why could that be a negative? Well, you see, the sheer amount of content can create an element of FOMO for Nemesis, and you don't need everything. It may well be that you could get the Void Seeders expansion, and you realise that actually, I don't like playing with them, and each expansion is a little bit expensive as well. Most people will tend to go kind of all in on the Kickstarter, but if you're going that route, you're going to have lots and lots of content that you may well never touch. Now, I probably played everything for Nemesis. I barely scratched the surface on Nemesis Lockdown. I played the base game about 10 times, a dozen times, something like that. And I've played a couple of games with the Chitrids, but I still need to explore Lockdown a little bit more. But the sheer amount of content can feel overwhelming. So my advice to you is just to get the base game. And whether that's, you know, the Alien type game of Nemesis or the Aliens type game of Nemesis Lockdown, just get the base game. If you're on the fence about it, try it out, play it true solo, play it multi-handed solo or two-handed solo, see how you feel about it. If you want more, stuff is available in retail, but don't necessarily be tempted for going for everything, because the sheer amount of content, from terrain pieces to other races to the untold stories, etc., it can be a little bit too much. Okay, number 4 on why this game may or may not be for you is the production values. This is a really well produced game. You know, you have, well, I've got the neoprene mats, but you have these double-sided boards, which are kind of the basic and the advanced side, both on Alien, on Nemesis, and on Nemesis Lockdown, which really changes it because you have some surface actions on the more advanced side on there. You have the wonderful kind of miniatures as well. So here we have the Night Stalkers from Nemesis Lockdown, and here we have the Night Stalker Queen from Nemesis Lockdown. You have, you know, things like if you got the if you went in kind of all in on the Kickstarter and got the terrain expansions and the stretch goals, you've got things like the Moon Rover in Lockdown, which is a mini. There are some cardboard pieces you can use for some of that, and things like the doors, etc. So the production quality is really, really top notch. It's absolutely fantastic, from the thickness of the boards to how you kind of lay out your cards, from the individual item cards, etc., right through to the miniatures and the tiles that you place on the board. It's all truly top notch, and therefore that kind of reflects the price. As I say, I think you can probably pick Nemesis original base game for around about £100 now, but to really bring it out, you're going to have to spend a little bit more on that. So with that is the flip side of it, and therefore, because of the high production values that you've got, what you've got is a relatively expensive game. And, you know, as a solo gamer, spending £100 on a pure solo game might be really prohibitive for you. Apologies, you may have heard my own little alien Bambi barking then. But yeah, the £100 for a pure solo game, or a game you're only ever going to play solo, is a lot of money. Could they reduce that price point? Absolutely, they could reduce the price point. You know, there's a lot of plastic here in terms of the miniatures, etc. The game could absolutely be replicated by using tokens. They could have a lighter version out of this, and that way you'd be able to get it, access it for maybe £50 or £60 rather than £100 or whatever the equivalent is in dollars. Same with Nemesis Lockdown. It's a big box full of cards and plastic, and therefore you're going to be paying around about £100 for that as well. It is a lot of money, all told. Once you look at, you know, everything I've got for Nemesis, everything I've got for Nemesis Lockdown, plus what I backed for Nemesis Retaliation, you're probably looking at somewhere in the region of round about £500 to £600 for a series of games. That's a lot of money, when, you know, in reality, as thematic as the plastic miniatures are, if they released a kind of cut down version with either standees or tokens, etc., to replace that, they could have a more accessible price point for people. I think it's a really important point as well, because Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown are truly divisive games, and therefore the ability to try them out and play them first is a real kind of key component for people, or a real key interest for people, and you don't want to be spending £100 on a game you think you might like. So I would say absolutely go out there and do your research before you go for it. So yeah, in terms of production values and production quality, absolutely top notch. If you go over and above and you get the stretch goals and you get the neoprene mats, then it's absolutely fantastic. You may well want them painted as well. You may want to paint them, etc. Painting, I think, because most of the miniatures look exactly the same could become a little bit tedious, but I've seen some fantastic painted models out there. But yeah, so price point, production quality is absolutely fantastic, but it does affect that price point, and you may not want all this plastic in your gameplay. So that was point number 4. Now let's come on to point number 5, which is the rules. Once you get the flow of the game down, each round will work really, really, really quickly. You will play your cards, you will take your actions, and when you're done, the next character will play their cards and take their actions. Then you move into kind of the intruder phase or the Night Stalker phase, when things happen there. And in reality, the breakdown of those moves is very, very straightforward. You're playing a card, you're paying the cost, you're doing the action, and you keep doing that till your hand is empty, and then it moves over, etc., and then some stuff happens. So, as they should be, the rules are relatively straightforward, and that makes for a rewarding experience. You know, I have taught the game to people, I have played it multiplayer and taught the game to people, and because I know how to play the game, that teach was relatively straightforward. Within a couple of rounds, people had got what was happening, and the game was starting to flow. Even with a couple of new players, was starting to flow very, very quickly. So understanding the rules, once you've got it down, is really, really, the game flows really, really quickly. It's not a complex game to play, which brings me on to the negative of this. So a reason why it may not be for you, because in typical Awakened Realms fashion, the rule books are not great. The structure of them and the layout of the rule books makes it pretty difficult to kind of grok where things are for a first-time player. Now, I jumped straight into Nemesis Lockdown pretty much because I knew how to play Nemesis off the bat. There are some differences in how the game plays in terms of things like the power and the noise tokens, etc. But you know, if you understand how to play Nemesis, then you will absolutely understand kind of 90% of how to play Nemesis Lockdown. But for a first-time gamers going into Nemesis, because of the layout of the rulebook and the player aids, which even in Nemesis Lockdown they learnt some things from Nemesis but didn't quite learn everything from Nemesis, you're going to have to find yourself kind of flicking through the rulebook and these room sheets and various other bits and bobs, just because the player aids aren't totally comprehensive. And I say the structure of the rulebook, they've done it so it reads a bit like a story, but in reality that makes it a little bit difficult to learn. I would have liked to have seen some kind of prescriptive first round play, like I would with a lot of games, a prescriptive first round play. Here's how you play it, here's how most of the mechanisms work, go and do that. And I think that is really key, is that, you know, Awakened Realms, they're not known for having great rule books. Nemesis was an earlier game of theirs, it really wasn't there. Nemesis Lockdown is an improvement, but it still falls into that same Awakened Realms trap where everything is just either not in the right place, or it's a bit disjointed, or it's not explained properly, that it's slightly ambiguous wording, etc. Or, you know, the really key parts are in kind of small words. So grokking the rules can be a little bit of an issue. However, there are some fantastic kind of how to plays and playthroughs online. So I would absolutely suggest kind of looking at those, and if you're learning to play the game. So positive is, once you understand the rules, it's relatively straightforward to play, and you'll have no problem once you've got those rules down, understanding and how to play things and how things go. But getting to understanding those rules is kind of, it's a barrier that Awakened Realms seem to hit on most games. They haven't fully overcome yet. I do think that, although I don't particularly like the game, I think ISS Vanguard rulebook is better by leaps and bounds than either Nemesis or Nemesis Lockdown, and hopefully they've learnt it for Retaliation, and we'll see some improvements in Retaliation rules. So that's it. That's kind of 5 key reasons why the Nemesis games may or may not be for you. I am biased because I love Nemesis. I will say, mechanically, Nemesis Lockdown is the better game, and I will play Nemesis Lockdown any day of the week. The mechanisms are kind of more refined. You have the power mechanism, which really helps. You have the way that you get rid of noise markers, which doesn't happen in Nemesis. It just feels a more rounded game. But I still prefer to play Nemesis over Nemesis Lockdown. I love them both, but I still prefer to play Nemesis over Nemesis Lockdown. And why is that? Because I have this massive affinity with Alien, and it really does, and it really does strike that chord with me. It kind of scratches that itch for me. And I think at the time when I was just getting into board games, it was by far and away the best game I played at that particular point. I absolutely adored it, and therefore Nemesis will always hold out for me as kind of a tier above Nemesis Lockdown. Other people may prefer Lockdown, I absolutely get that, but it's for personal reasons that even though Nemesis Lockdown is mechanically a better game, it does play better and it creates a smoother experience, I still prefer Nemesis. Maybe because of, not in spite of, its flaws. Now, as we talk about Nemesis Retaliation, which I say is on Gamefound at the moment, the link will be in the description below, I'd love to tell you more about it. But what I've done, based on the strength of the fact I love Nemesis Lockdown, I know Adam Kopinski makes great games, I know Awaken Realms make great production value, is I've gone all in on Nemesis Retaliation, and I know not one thing about it. And I think that kind of speaks to the strength of how much I love Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown. I've not watched one video. I've not read any of the description, etc. I knew it was coming out when I spoke to Adam at Gen Con earlier this year, and a little bit before that as well. So I knew it was coming out. I'm not on Awaken Realms kind of reviewer list, so I don't get any preview copies or anything like that from Awaken Realms. So I was going to watch videos. I backed it, and then I thought, I'll watch a video. And then I thought, no, I want this game to be a total surprise for me. So I have that much faith in Adam Kopinski and Awaken Realms on Nemesis, on the Nemesis lines. You know, not so much with some of the other Awaken Realms games, but certainly on the Nemesis lines, I have that much faith that I've gone all in without seeing a single frame of gameplay, and I'm eagerly awaiting 2025 or whenever it is that it's going to get delivered. So I'm really looking forward to that. So if you are considering backing Nemesis Retaliation, or you've been curious about the Nemesis games, both Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown, from a solo perspective, I hope these kind of 5 reasons why or why not they may be for you have helped you in some way. If you're still curious, then by all means go and check out my original Nemesis review video, which, you know, is obviously very, very glowing. Go and check out other people's reviews and playthroughs. Make sure you check out people who don't like the game as well, because they will have some really valid points about why that game, why those games don't work for them. And I think you've got to take those into consideration, given the price point, given the fact it's a lot of plastic, given the fact that the rules aren't great. Yes, you'll always be able to sell it on if you do buy it and don't look at it and don't like it. But do go and check out not only positive videos, but go and check out some of the people that don't like Nemesis and Nemesis Lockdown, because you will get a more fully rounded view. But I really hope that these 5 reasons have helped you kind of some way towards making your decision. So there we go. Thank you very much for watching this relatively brief kind of run through on 5 reasons why the Nemesis games may or may not be for you. I hope this helps you in some way. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Check out my original Nemesis review video from maybe 4 years ago. And one final thought. Remember, if you can't find anyone else to play with, there's nothing wrong with playing with yourselves. Until next time, bye-bye.